We have two Bible readings this morning. The first is from Micah, chapter 6, verses 6 to 8. What shall I bring to the Lord, the God of heaven, when I come to worship him? Shall I bring best calves to burn as offerings to him? Will the Lord be pleased if I bring him thousands of sheep or endless streams of olive oil? Shall I offer him my firstborn child to pay for my sins? No. The Lord has told us what is good. What he requires of us is this: to do what is just, to show constant love, and to live in humble fellowship with our God. And the second reading is from Matthew chapter 5. Verses 1 to 12. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered round him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Teach us wisdom, O God."
On the 28th of August in 1963, a man stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." His short address, which was only 5 minutes in all, was a challenge to the United States of America to become a nation that made room for all people in the mainstream of life, regardless of colour, race, or ethnicity. Dr. King's speech, like all great visions, contains elements of both beauty and terror. Beauty because his words are inspired and connected with a deep truth: all people are loved by God. Terror because his words revealed attitudes and actions that were unjust and oppressive. And he challenged the nation to be something more. 60 years later, the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction, going backwards, it seems. One wonders who will bring the new voice of mercy and justice and peace. Throughout human history, visions of change have been passionate. Nelson Mandela's vision of South Africa beyond the inhumanity of apartheid. In Australia in 2008, we heard words of vision and hope from Kevin Rudd on behalf of our nation to the stolen generations of Indigenous children forcibly taken from their parents under a cultural assumption that this was for their good. And we all live with the tension that continues to be part of our history in Australia. Last Thursday we saw people calling for the day to be changed and for this day, to the 26th, to be called Invasion Day. But we also honoured some outstanding Australians, people who are making a difference, who have vision and courage, and who work for a better world for all of us. Jesus' vision is both beautiful and terrifying. For those who listened to his vision and teaching, I imagine that the words were powerful and challenging. After all, they've been treasured by generations who followed Jesus through the centuries. The beauty of Jesus' vision for human well-being and harmony is not all sweetness and light. Rather, the beauty of the vision is found in Jesus' tenacious belief that humanity can find practical ways to live in peace with justice and kindness. This vision is not realised without genuine change and clear intention. Living Jesus' vision only comes to us by way of mutual and extraordinary respect for all living things, and that often requires sacrifice. So these words of blessing, the Beatitudes, are not simply visions or hopes for happiness to be found eventually beyond this world. As a beautiful vision, they command our attention and our willing response for the transformation of this world for the sake of all in our time and in the future. Listen to what the world says. Happy are those who push their way forward. They get on in the world. Happy are the thick-skinned, because they never let life hurt them. Happy are those that complain, because they get their own way in the end. Happy are the blasé, because they never worry over their sins. Happy are the slave drivers. They get the results they want. Happy are the knowledgeable people of the world, because they get on, because they know their way around. They know how to use the systems. Happy are the troublemakers, because people have to take notice of them. Every day we are reminded through our media that our chief aim in this life is to be happy, and we have a right to complain or to blame if we are not. And there is an attitude of entitlement. Me, me, me. Looking through our world's eyes, if we were to try and make a list of the truly happy today, would we include those that Jesus names? The poor in spirit, the depressed? Would we include the mourners, those who grieve, or the meek, the losers, or the hungry and thirsty for righteousness, those who take all the fun and pleasure out of life, or the persecuted? They bring it on themselves. We might possibly include the merciful among the happy until we remember that they probably lack the essential toughness that's needed to make it in this world. And the pure in heart? It seems there's no room for prudes in this liberated generation. And how about peacemakers? It sounds good, but if you try and take it seriously, you run into the governments of the world and the military machine and the industrial complex. It makes what Jesus is saying sound pretty odd. Jesus says to us, "Excuse me, I'm not talking about the world's standards, the way the 21st century society is. I am talking about God's way." Jesus outlines the attitudes of a true disciple, one who has accepted the demands of God in contrast to the ways of the world. The rewards for discipleship are spelt out. The emphasis is not so much on whether the rewards are for the present or for the future, but rather there is the promise of certainty that our discipleship will not be in vain. The promises of finding God's blessing in the small or difficult moments of life and in discovering new understandings of wisdom. Jesus is talking about the materially poor, the ones who are living at subsistence level, the beggars, the homeless, the wretched. He is talking about the innocent, the victimized, those who are oppressed by the system to such a degree that all they can hope for is a blessing from God. He's also talking about those who are so utterly crushed and empty as a result of their circumstances that their spirits are crushed. The ones for whom life seems utterly hopeless. Jesus is saying to these people, the poor, the empty, the mournful in spirit, I'm on your side. I will bless you. And he's also talking to those who stand beside the poor, those who work to make a better world. And he echoes the words of the prophet Micah in his intent, those who seek justice, love, and kindness, and who try to follow God's ways for their lives. That is what Jesus requires. For me, the crux of this teaching is that those of us, those who are aware, those who know that they are poor in spirit, are the ones who will be blessed. Those who know that they are at the end of their tether. An alcoholic once put it this way, I was powerless over my life. I had to reach out to some power that was greater than my own. For such a person at the end of their rope, God isn't an intellectual problem. For the alcoholic, God is the only hope. So what is the nature of this blessing? Some translations use the word happy, but that for me shifts the meaning. Happiness is a state of feeling, a state of inner satisfaction maybe. Many things can make us happy without being a blessing. Blessing, on the other hand, is not a feeling, I don't think, but the quality of a relationship. The alcoholic reached out of his helplessness, reached out for a relationship. You can't earn this blessing. Just receive it as it is, a gift from God, pure gift, grace. There are no conditions to be met. When we mourn, when we are grieving, we can be surrounded by those who love us and hold us in their arms. We are not happy, but we can be comforted and be blessed. The blessings of Jesus reverse the world's conventional wisdom and values. They don't urge us to be this or that, but they are a statement about God's intention to bless us despite human injustice and misfortunes. There is a Jewish line which says, just to exist is a blessing, to have life is holy. This is why the Beatitudes have been called the Beatitudes, the attitudes of being. Perhaps Jesus refers to the blessedness of simply allowing oneself to be oneself rather than trying to be something else or someone else. Those who are seen as poor and less fortunate can in fact be far richer spiritually than those with wealth, because they are much closer to the true gift of life and can appreciate the blessings that are inherent even in the simple necessities of life. Because here is the mystery, here is the paradox. Jesus doesn't say, blessed are the rich in spirit. To be a person is to be a person of spirit. We come here on Sundays to be inspired by the Spirit. Yet Jesus blesses the spiritually inept, the spiritual failures. He blesses those who aren't good at being spiritual, those who know what it's like to be dispirited. And I suspect that most of us yearn to be spiritually uplifted. So what does this say to us, those whom the outside world looks upon as being religious, the ones who are good at singing to God, praying, believing? I think Jesus' message today speaks to those who may be sitting here silently hurting, wanting something but unable to say quite what it is, maybe feeling empty or unsteady, frightened for the future. Is this what Jesus means by being poor in spirit to you? The message of Jesus is that God blesses our troubled souls, our questioning minds. God blesses those who are skeptical or doubting, those who are stumbling in the dark, those who feel that they have bungled morally, the ones who fail in faith. If you are one of these, then you are one of the ones that Jesus promises to bless. This message of Jesus is a message of hope, and you can rest in God. So the vision of Jesus is about taking heart, facing fears, standing up against oppressive forces, doing so within the compelling and healing nature of God's inclusive grace and love. Jesus' vision is both beautiful and terrifying, for living into the vision does not come without risk and sacrifice, but it comes nevertheless. The challenging yet inviting question for those of us who claim to follow Jesus is, to what extent can we make this radical vision for equality and human kindness our own? To what extent are we prepared to be changed by it? I've got a broad translation of these same Beatitudes from Your God is Too Small by B.J. Phillips. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who realize their spiritual poverty. They have already entered the kingdom of reality. Blessed are those who bear their share of the world's pain. In the long run, they will know more happiness than those who avoid it. Blessed are those who accept life and their own limitations. They will find more life than anybody. Blessed are those who long to be truly good. They will fully realize their ambition. Blessed are those who are ready to make allowances and to forgive. They will know the love of God. Blessed are those who are real in their thoughts and their feelings. In the end, they will see ultimate reality, God. Blessed are those who help others to live together in harmony." And I finish with a poem that I loved long before I sort of even thought about going into the church. It's by James Macaulay. One thing at least I understood, practically from the start, that loving must be learnt by heart, if it's to be any good at all. It isn't in the flash of thunder, but by the silent power to give, a habit into which we live ourselves and grow to be a wonder. Some, like me, are slow to learn. What's plain can be mysterious still. Feelings alter, fade, return. But love stands constant in the will. It's now alone the loving seeing. It's how to mean the other's being. Amen.